Don't forget, you can reach the latest episode of Potomac Watch anytime. Just ask your smart speaker, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. Democrats in the 2022 elections retained control of the Senate, but by a very slim margin, 51 to 49, which means that control of the chamber, at least to my eye, looks easily up for grabs again in 2024. And on that score, Republicans seem to have gotten some good news when West Virginia Governor Jim Justice announced that he would run for Senate, challenging incumbent Joe Manchin. Let's listen to a bit of Justice's announcement.
I hate like crazy it's taken this long to make a decision, because really and truly you didn't deserve being teased, and you never have deserved being teased. Politicians do that all the time. I don't want to be that. I want to tell you that tonight I am officially announcing my candidacy for the United States Senate, and I absolutely will promise you to God above that I will do the job, and I will do the job that will make you proud. God bless each and every one of you.
Kim, what do you make of this race? Does Justice become the favorite now for the West Virginia Senate seat? He will probably face a Republican primary, but he's a very popular governor. And then in the general election, West Virginia is a state that in 2020 voted 67% for President Trump and only 30% for Joe Biden.
Yeah, and that's why Justice is likely to get a primary contender, because this is a very Republican state. This is going to be a competitive Senate seat. And, Joe Manchin has sort of brought this on himself. If you go back to the last time he was elected, 2018, he barely squeaked through in that election. And, that had to do with the fact that, again, Republican state. Now, he has certainly positioned himself over the years to try to retain the support of West Virginia voters. He's often culturally far less to the left than much of his party. He has defected on key issues. He's been a very strong supporter of continued growth of West Virginia coal and fossil fuels, things that really provide jobs. But where he really got himself sideways was when he decided last year to finally cut a deal with Chuck Schumer and enable Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. And since then, you have seen his approval ratings plummet. If you go back to April of the last year, he had something like close to a 57% approval rating because he had been standing out against a lot of the Democratic demands and Biden's enormous agenda. Now that he rolled over for that, he's at closer to 40%. So Republicans see this race as a real opportunity. So there are going to be more people getting into that primary. There's an opportunity for somebody to potentially become a new Republican senator for West Virginia. And that's going to put a lot of focus on West Virginia, too, because interestingly, in theory, the Republicans should have a very good Senate year next year, in that there are more Democrats who are up for re-election than Republicans. But when you actually drill down into the map, a lot of those Democratic seats that are up are for longtime senators who are from very blue states. It would be very hard to knock off. Some of those that are from more purple states, they simply start with the power of the incumbency. It's sometimes hard to get to them. And then you're sort of looking at states like West Virginia, or maybe Montana, where John Tester is up, maybe Arizona, where Sinema is up. But there's only a handful, so there's going to be a lot of attention on West Virginia in this race.
One thing to watch until November of 2024, though, is how this challenge by a real strong Republican candidate, whether that affects Manchin's behavior. He was already a little bit irked at Joe Biden, and over the years there has sometimes been talk about whether Manchin could switch parties himself. He has always seemed like too much of a tax and spend Democrat for that to be realistic. But Monet, I can only imagine that if he does want to run for re-election and stay West Virginia's senator, it will be a very interesting 2 years as he tries to figure out the way that he can vote against his party enough to attract some of the Republican and independent votes without angering all of the Democrats that he would also need to get over 50%.
Yeah, and that's exactly why Joe Manchin has put off the decision of whether he's going to seek re-election. He has said that he won't decide until the end of this year, possibly. And so he probably is trying to feel out whether he has a big enough base of those crossover votes, Republicans who like and trust him in West Virginia, a very conservative state, who would be willing to vote for him against Jim Justice, who's extremely popular, not only with Republicans, but with Democrats in the state. And so both of these candidates have crossover appeal in West Virginia. And Manchin probably knows that Justice has a little bit of the edge because of the registered voter advantage that Republicans do have, but wants to see whether it's possible that he's able to build up a base of support.
But Kim, if he decides not to run for re-election, what then? I mean, there has been some talk, some scuttlebutt about maybe a Manchin 2024 presidential run is in the cards, and maybe not within the Democratic Party. It could be on the ballot line of this No Labels group, which is working to get ballot access in all 50 states. Do you put any stock in that idea? I mean, Manchin has been asked about that in recent weeks, and he has refused to rule it out. But that is also the kind of thing that a politician does when he knows that refusing to rule it out will only get him talked about more.
Correct. And by the way, Joe Manchin is very, very good at making sure that he gets talked about. Look, the no labels idea, and as you said, he refused to rule it out. It strikes me as more fantastical. Just if you think about the mechanics of doing an independent run, okay, it would be helpful if there was an organization like No Labels that had already done all the groundwork to potentially get you on the ballot later on. There's a lot of deadlines you have to hit to do that. And a lot of independent runs struggle for that reason alone, and that they lack the money and the resources to do that. This is a group that's got a lot of donors behind it, so you could do that. But then you have to look at the idea of like, okay, well, he'd still be running against two major party candidates, Democrat and a Republican. In order to kind of really make that bid worthwhile, he might need to run with a Republican. We all know that the American system is kind of geared around a two-party approach, and that this is why independent bids often struggle. So I see it less there. Now, were Joe Manchin to get angry enough with his party and with the White House, given the way he's been treated by them in the last couple of years, the fact that they have yet to fulfill their promise to him on permitting reform and other things he was promised, could he get angry enough and concerned enough about his reelection prospects in West Virginia that he could enter a Democratic primary and challenge Joe Biden? That I see as more possible, but also more realistic from a success point of view, given how weak Biden is with his own voters, given that for all the talk of progressives in the party, don't forget that it was far more moderate Democrats that united in the end to give the nomination to Biden rather than Bernie Sanders. They are still very powerful in many of the states at issue here. And, that's the kind of people that Joe Manchin could probably make a far more credible pitch to, given that everyone's now seeing that Biden is no moderate.
Thank you, Kim and Monet. Thank you all for listening. You can email us at pwpodcast@wsj.com. If you like the show, please hit that subscribe button, and we'll be back tomorrow with another edition of Potomac Watch.